A virus undergoes dramatic evolution while a horseshoe crab never does. Telomeres in the DNA actually refute evolution. Hot off the presses, Indiana approves a bill to teach creation in the classroom. And of course, we read viewer comments. This is Genesis Week. And welcome to this episode of Genesis Week, the weekly program of creationary commentary on news, views, and events pertaining to the Origins controversy, brought to you by Core Ottawa, Citizens for Origins Research and Education, and exclusive right here on YouTube. Excellence in pirate broadcasting, we bring you the information the anti-creationists don't want you to see or hear, and we show the glory of God in creation. Every single show has been in the top 10 most discussed videos in science and technology on YouTube. Remember, you can punch in wazulu.com or genesisweek.com and you will find us, or click the ever so convenient subscribe link up top, and you can peruse the other episodes by following the links in the upper corners of each episode. I'm your host, Ian Juby. MSU scientists reported in this week's edition of Science magazine that they had observed alleged evolution of viruses in the lab. Now, right off the bat, we need to address the sticky problem of just what is evolution? How do you define it? There seems to be not much doubt these scientists are using the very weak definition of evolution as simply change over time. However, as I pointed out in Crevo Rant number 41, this definition makes a great presidential campaign slogan, but fails miserably to describe evolution, as it would include the evolution of the bicycle and languages, both of which are intelligently designed, and would also include things like genetic entropy, which is the opposite of evolution, but definitely change over time. There's also the problem of viruses not even being definable as life, based on the evolutionary definitions of life. So already the application of this research to evolution is in question. Now, this alleged evolution was rapid and dramatic, with the virus undergoing 4 mutations that enabled it to attack E. coli bacteria. So, does this help evolution? Well, not really. First of all, some may get excited over this, believing that the first life on Earth was perhaps a virus. In fact, the Canadian Museum of Nature used to state this specifically in an audio exhibit. However, viruses can't reproduce. Viruses take over the reproduction system of living cells to reproduce. Therefore, viruses couldn't be the first life because they need other life to exist. Secondly, as Dr. Michael Behe pointed out regarding the science paper, the bottom line is that the results are interesting and well done, but not particularly novel, nor particularly significant. As Behe pointed out in his review on the Evolution News website, the virus in the experiment wasn't the only thing evolving. The bacteria that were being used as the target by the predator virus were also rapidly changing in defense. Now, this is well known in bacteria, actually. Cells, such as the bacteria, have receptors in their skin which link to various biochemicals for signaling. Viruses dock to these bacteria using these receptors, thus infecting the bacteria. But there are many different receptors, and viruses can only dock to specific receptors. When the bacteria detected that these viruses were docking to one receptor, they destroyed the receptor. The virus then changed to be able to infect the bacteria using a sugar called mannose that the bacteria brings into the cell. The bacteria recognized the infection and destroyed the system which makes the sugar. Thus, the virus couldn't infect the bacteria. In the closing words of Behe, so at the end of the day, there was left the mutated virus, still incompetent to invade most E. coli cells, plus mutated E. coli, now with broken genes which removed its ability to metabolize maltose and mannose. It seems Darwinian evolution took a little step sideways and 2 big steps backwards. Contrary to what most think, viruses are actually an important part of life, and part of the big picture system that produces variety critical for life. Viruses actually carry disease resistance from one organism to another. Viruses that cause harm are actually evidence of something gone wrong. This was a perfect world. But just like you can ruin your car by disregarding the specific instructions in the owner's manual, written by the creator of your car, So does disregarding the specific instruction in God's written owner's manual, the Bible. It has caused problems throughout all of the earth. An excellent article dealing with the subject of viruses in life by Dr. Jerry Bergman is available on the True Origin website. The British Museum of Natural History had a short article on the horseshoe crab, allegedly true proof of evolution, seeing as how it hasn't changed, according to the evolutionary timescale, in 450 million years, and has survived 3 of Earth's major extinctions. This article was a perfect propaganda piece, putting all the spin in just the right places. As I mentioned briefly just a moment ago, if you ask the majority of evolutionary thinkers to define evolution, almost all of them would say change over time. Now, I disagree with that vague definition, but it is useful in this case to make my point. Evolution requires change over time. The horseshoe crab and countless other organisms in the fossil record have not changed over time. This is called stasis. But did that slow them down from heralding the horseshoe crab as proof of evolution? Oh, heck no. The last paragraph is actually entitled A Strange Evolution. Evolution not only brings about improvements in body shapes and design that help a species better adapt to its surroundings, it also allows some species to remain basically the same. These creatures tell us that evolution does not move inevitably forwards towards new morphology and new designs, comments 40. Evidence for evolution is also found in past designs that endure to the present day. As long as the right habitat endures, then so will some of the creatures that inhabit the distant past. This article is a classic example of just how flexible evolution is. No matter what the evidence is, evolution twists, contorts, and distorts itself to fit the evidence. Folks, a theory that explains all evidence, even contradictory evidence, is not science. Such a theory is clearly not falsifiable, and therefore it is not science. Instead, the horseshoe crab provides powerful evidence of creation, with organisms reproducing faithfully after their kind, exactly like the book of Genesis says in its first chapter. Institute for Creation Research reported on one of their research projects in this month's X and Facts, the study of telomeres in the middle of DNA chains. Now, your DNA strands are clustered together into 23 groups called chromosomes. Chimpanzee DNA is clustered into 24 chromosomes. This causes a dilemma for evolution, because the great apes and humans are supposed to have a common ancestor. But yet, how does a 23 chromosome sperm fertilize a 24 chromosome egg? It can't. So the evolutionary thinkers, a certain Dr. Miller in particular, have proposed the idea that somewhere in human ancestry there was a fusion of 2 ape chromosomes into 1 chromosome, specifically chromosome number 2 of the human. Of course, he glosses over the point that you have to have the exact same chromosomal fusion in a male and a female at the same time and in the same place, and they have to find each other and mate. Now, if you recall, DNA is a string of chemical letters, G, C, T, and A. The end of the DNA strands and chromosomes contain a long repeating sequence of T, T, A, G, G, G. Now, usually the sequence is repeated thousands of times to mark the end of the strand. This is called a telomere. So Miller went on record at the Anti-Intelligent Design Kitzmiller-Dover court case to say that the human chromosome 2 is actually 2 fused ape chromosomes, and claims it's proven because there is a telomere sequence right smack dab in the middle of the human chromosome 2, exactly where we would expect that the 2 chromosomes fused. The anti-creationists have become quite arrogant with this alleged fact all over YouTube, posting videos with bold titles like How to Shut Up Pesky Creationists. Well, alas, not only does it not shut me up, it grants the creationary community the perfect opportunity to show just how incredibly wrong and even deceitful the anti-creationists can be. In August 2011, Journal of Creation, Drs. Tompkins and Bergman dropped a nuclear bomb on the claim of chromosomal fusion. In fact, I'll have a rant hopefully coming out shortly just on this subject. Tompkins and Bergman showed conclusively that there is zero evidence for a chromosomal fusion. For example, that alleged telomere sequence in the middle of the human chromosome 2? Yeah, it was in completely the wrong place. And it's not a telomere because it's too short, and almost every chromosome has these pseudo-telomeres in their middles. Contrary to what the ever-so-reliable Wikipedia says, the sequence on either side of the pseudo-telomere did not match the DNA sequence of chimpanzees, as would be expected. Now, there's much more to this, but I will simply refer you to my blog post here. Tompkins wrote a brief layman synopsis here, and of course, the technical article here. It is now being discovered that these pseudo-telomeres have, of course, purpose. Gee, that's what the creationists would say. ICR has commissioned a research project looking into the purposes of these pseudo-telomeres. Hot off the presses and heating up the anti-creation community, Indiana Senate has approved a bill allowing the teaching of creation science in the science classroom. Now, while the NCSE and ACLU get all hot under the collar over this, the reality is that any teacher is already permitted to teach creation in the classroom. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled on this years ago. What the Supreme Court concluded was that school boards were not permitted to force their teachers to teach creation, which, frankly, I would agree. But as this story unfolds, I would like to point out to you viewers to keep an eye on what happens over the next little while. Notice how quickly lawsuits will come out of this. Why? Because evolution must hide from scrutiny and questioning, but there's only one place it can hide: behind judges, lawyers, and school policies. This is anti-science, as true science welcomes scrutiny. Woohoo! Mail for me? In episode 4 of Genesis Week, I reported on alleged multi-celled yeast being produced in the lab. YouTuber TubeNotMe wrote in suggesting that I clarify a point. In that show, I had stated that the action of the centrifuge had caused the clustering, which is not what the original article said. Now, to clarify, I was aware of this, but I do still think that the extreme G-forces did more than just sorting. I think those forces actually did contribute to the production of the snowflake clusters, even if the authors disagree. A writer going by the name Son of the Only Wise God also wrote to me privately. Congratulations on your yeast report. Bread is like the sun. It rises in the east and sets in the west. You want a free ride in my centrifuge. I am not impressed with the Darwinists' claim that they have formed a multicellular organism, and certainly not by natural selection. In a single-celled organism, the cell performs all the necessary functions. In a multicellular organism, there are different types of cell which allow the formation of organs. These organs act collectively in concert to do all the cell functions, but with the specialization of labor. The yeast under the centrifuge is a compaction of single cells with no specialization of cell functions. There is absolutely no comparison. This argument is dumb and desperate. Thanks for writing in. That is a significant point. Multicelled organisms have cells specializing in different jobs. The snowflake yeast cells did what yeast did best, because they were still yeast. I agree this had nothing to do with the evolution of multicellular life. In amongst his childish name-calling and behavior, L.A. Wilson still insisted on taking me to task on the Paluxy tracks, showing just how little he knows about them. Ken Ham wrote in 2003 on Paluxy, and in 1996, a number of leading creationist researchers decided that the evidence of supposedly human and dinosaur footprints, found together in the Paluxy River in Texas, had serious problems. They decided that, pending further research to establish the correct interpretation of the prints, they could no longer be safely used as evidence supporting the fact, based on the biblical account of creation, that man and dinosaur lived at the same time. Care to comment? Sure. But please note that neither Ken Ham nor anyone else from AIG has ever actually spent time in the Paluxy, as I have. Let us also remember the task force assembled by the Twin Cities Creation Science Association, who published their conclusions in the book Texas Tracks and Artifacts. After examining the evidence presented for and against the human footprint interpretation, this team of scientists concluded that they were genuine human footprints. AIG and other creationists are apparently unaware of this book, or have ignored it, as has the anti-creationary community. Morris retracted his original book because of errors in his book, and AIG and other creationists have decided not to use the Paluxy evidence based on Kubin's alleged research of the Paluxy tracks, and in particular, the red-stained dinosaur tracks. Kubin proposed that the human footprints were actually the result of a dinosaur walking on its heels, metatarsal impressions. For some mysterious reason, Kubin never mentioned in any of his reports that apparently the dinosaur's heels were dislocated, because the position of the heel in each of the Taylor tracks changed position as you go down the trail. Apparently, the dinosaur's heel fell off and made its own trail, with the +6 track landing squarely in the left toe of a dinosaur track from another trail, going in the exact opposite direction. This one track alone not only destroys Kubin's hypothesis, it raises a disturbing question. Did Kubin not see this red-stained dinosaur track when he went there specifically to study the red-stained dinosaur tracks? If so, what other glaringly obvious crucial evidence did he miss? Or did he deliberately leave out crucial information in his report? In either case, Kubin has demonstrated that his research is invalid and untrustworthy, and so is the NCSC, who apparently never bothered to check out Kubin's research. Oddly enough, Kubin did mark the claw impressions of that particular dinosaur track on his map. So I will let the viewers draw their own conclusions about what Kubin did and did not know, and what he did and did not report. Kubin also never seemed to notice that the dinosaur footprints and human footprints erode differently. The human footprints become eroded into a depression, while the dinosaur tracks become raised. It's differential erosion. Clearly, the dinosaur and human tracks were made at two separate times. Lastly, L.A. Wilson has claimed that the CT scans of the belt track were invalidated, which they never were. The skeptics, such as Wilson, just chose not to believe the evidence. And yes, progress has been made. In fact, we've had some 6 fossil human footprints, 1 carved human footprint, and a carved text rock, all scanned on an industrial-powered CT scanner. Basically, with the exception of one of the fossil tracks, which could not originally be scanned on the medical scanner in Glenrose we originally used, the new CT scans showed exactly what the Glenrose medical scanner showed, only in higher resolution. So no, the CT scans were never invalidated, contrary to what L.A. Wilson would like to believe. I will be producing a video showing the scans, which number over 10,000 images. eQuestions took L.A. Wilson and multiple others to task in a very long series of posts regarding the Delt track, which I'm just going to repeat here because it is very meaty and he hit the nail on the head. L.A. Wilson, just an opinion that fits yours. Kubin hasn't even looked at the actual rock himself. He's just giving his opinions based on pictures from the internet. Regardless, you accept Kubin's opinions over the actual people that studied the actual rock. So much for understanding real science. You also make claims that to the CT scans, which is by far the most funny to me. You claim the CT scans should have been done by industrial machines instead of a hospital. Why? Not because you actually know something about CTs, but because some guy named Gary Hurd said it on Kubin's website. Who's this Gary Hurd guy? He has a PhD in social science and has spent most of his life as a psychiatrist. Oh man, that's funny. You would dismiss the eyewitness accounts of people like Ian and Baugh, who at least have spent actual time with the rock itself. But the opinions of Kubin and a psychiatrist are definitely valid. So much for real science. In Wilson's deranged little world, eyewitness accounts aren't evidence at all, and a psychiatrist is the foremost authority on CT scanning technology. Wow, who knew? The next time I have a CT scan done, I won't go to a hospital. I'll just go look up Sigmund Freud. Haha, every time we converse, you just confound me with how your brain works. Amazing. Then you copy-paste from the University of Texas Austin website concerning the CT scanners, which I don't mind at all, as long as it refutes something, which yet again this does not. The site states at the top of it, high-resolution X-ray CT differs from conventional medical CAT scanning in its ability to resolve details as small as a few microns in size. But resolving details to a few microns is in no way necessary in this example to prove or disprove the tracks themselves. The hospital scanner would be perfectly fine for this particular application. The whole medical CT scanners are designed for humans, therefore they are simply not up to the task with simply your opinion and is nowhere on the site itself. You just threw that in, and from this you actually think you won our argument, but of course you would. Mr. No Evidence Needed only needs his own opinions, and that's all the evidence he needs. Even when the evidence is right there in front of him and is contrary to everything he says, it doesn't matter. What Wilson says is actual fact, and everyone must abide by his unfailing logic. So much for real science. It's truly an interesting world you live in, Wilson. Lie to everyone. Accept opinion over actual evidence, and with the exception of TSM, I'm not sure there's anyone on YouTube more in denial than you. You've been shown the truth and evidence over and over again, and you still run from it and claim victory with nothing more than the opinions and CT expert psychiatrists. Check and mate. Too funny. When you learn how the scientific method actually works, make sure you let us all know. We're all very tired of, I said it so, it's true. Man, questions. I wish I could buy you a coffee. If you send me your mailing address, I'll send you a Tim Hortons gift card. How about that? For more information on to see exactly what it was they were talking about, the Delk Track video is right here, in which I explain the CT scans performed on the Delk Track and why they verify that both the dinosaur and human footprint are genuine tracks. Hey Ian, I'm glad to see one of these videos on my sub box. It cheers me up. A lot of evolutionists say that the reason why laws that allow the teaching of creation science is because it violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Is it true or not? Thanks for writing in. It only violates the Establishment Clause if it forces teachers to teach creation, or any specific religion. You'll notice that the NCSE and others fight to even keep questioning of evolution out of the schools. Questioning is good science. I had a number of complaints from YouTubers mentioning that several comments were being marked as spam. I'd like to respectfully ask people not to do this. I simply do not have the time to sit there and monitor all comments and unspam them, especially because some people were actually appreciating the debate and getting their opponents' comments marked as spam. I'd also like to ask your opinions as viewers. It's been suggested that I moderate the comments, which to date I have avoided doing for several reasons. What do you think? Should I moderate and debate abusive comments? Should I turn off comments after a week? Give me your opinions in the comments down below, and that's enough for this week. Thanks for watching, and thanks for sharing this video with your friends using the convenient share button down below. I'm your host, Ian Juby, reminding you of the words of Christ who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me. We'll see you next Thursday.
Production software was provided for Genesis Week by the Big Valley Creation Science Museum. Located just 25 minutes north of Drumheller, Alberta, in the heart of dinosaur badlands, the Big Valley Creation Science Museum was built from the ground up to give credit to our Creator, portraying the scientific evidence showing that creation is the faith that fits the facts, and evolution is the faith that the facts have failed. Visit bvcsm.com for more details.